Okay, so this is Chandra Easton here from StarAstrologyHealing.com, talking this evening about Mars transiting Scorpio, which this particular year is from the 22nd of September through to the 5th of November. I hasten to add that every 2 years Mars moves through Scorpio. And because Mars in Scorpio is a very potent position, it's worth looking at that particular transit. So I'll talk a little bit about Scorpio, and I should say I'll look at a few charts towards the end of this talk. And Zachary, feel free to chime in if you see something obvious that you want to discuss. So when we think about Scorpio, we must think about Mars and Pluto. That's the esoteric and the exoteric rulers. And I've always been extremely interested in the degrees of the 30 degrees of the zodiac that are there in Scorpio, because of just a very mention that the Lord DK gave to the sign of Scorpio. Okay, so Ananda talks about the 3 T's when she talks about the redeeming of the shadow self. She talks about transmutation, transformation, and transfiguration, and these are associated with the purifying of the physical, etheric, the astral, and the lower mental levels of the body, of the aura, the physical body and the aura, so that eventually we rise in consciousness. And these 3 T's correlate quite beautifully with the 3 symbols that are associated with Scorpio. On the ordinary people's level, it's the serpent or the scorpion. For the disciples or those actively working to sort of be the best version of themselves and clean up their old karma and their past lives, that's represented by the eagle. And for the initiates, that's I would say from the sort of the 4th degree, maybe even the 3rd degree above, where there's a strong soul connection. Then we have the representation, the symbol of the phoenix. And it's the transfiguration that's associated with that 3rd initiation. And the transmutation and transformation, well, they're associated with the cleaning up of the aura in what we refer to as the little ones, the 1st and 2nd degree disciples. So Lady Ananda, in her book, The 17 Steps to Perfection, she gives us meditations through all the planets in the solar system. And Mars is the esoteric or the soul ruler of the sign of Scorpio. And Ananda tells us that if we meditate on the 3 qualities of self-control, faithfulness, and moderation, then that will magnetize or attract the shadow aspects of the Scorpio if we happen to have any Scorpio in our nature. Now, that could be the sun in Scorpio, could be the moon in Scorpio, could be the ascendant, could be the midheaven, could be progress Scorpio. But if you're wanting to lift the vibration of Scorpio, which is a very important sign of the zodiac when we're looking at this transmutation, transformation, and transfiguration. And that's the symbol that Ananda has in the book, The 17 Steps, which just seems to me to epitomise the 3 gates that we have to go through to clean up the physical, etheric, clean up the astral, clean up the mental. So I recommend that book, The 17 Steps to Perfection. There's a link to it at the end of the slideshow here. But on an exoteric or a worldly level, Scorpio is governed by the sign of Pluto, which was found in the, when was it? Do you remember the date, Zach? 1930 something?
1930.
1930, was it? Yeah. So yeah. The theory is that when a planet is discovered, it's discovered because humanity have evolved to the point that we're ready to deal with the energy of that planet. And the astrologers always take a while to figure out what is the meaning of Pluto. Well, Pluto really came dramatically onto the world scene with the atomic, the bomb, and so it's always had a great association with the harnessing of energies very, very deep within ourselves or the earth, and the blowing forward of the shadow self, sometimes known as the Lord of the Underworld. And it's got a very strong connection to the energy of will and power, the ego's attempt to maintain power or control at all costs. Now, the other thing that's interesting when you're studying astrology is to understand that the the symbols all mean something. So, for instance, if you look at the glyph here of Pluto, you'll see the circle of spirit up the top. And it looks for all the world like a person standing with their arms up to the heavens in surrender. And I think that's a wonderful analogy for what we have to do. If we resist the energy of Pluto and try and keep what's buried in the subconscious, we detonate ourselves. Whereas if we surrender and release and recognize that we would strive to put the personality or the ego in the back seat and have the soul in the driver's seat, then we work effectively with it. And then what happens, you see this circle epitomizes spirit, the arc epitomizes the intuition or the subconscious self, and the cross of matter is the worldly. And so when we have spirit taking control over matter, not the other way around, then we're working well with the energy of Pluto. And effectively what happens is that we have a battle. We have an internal battle for who's in control of the incarnation. Is it the personality? Is it the soul? And this is what we've been witnessing on the planet, is the battle for control, which is very strongly held in the sign of Scorpio. And so, of course, those who are approaching the fixed cross, the path of discipleship, generally have strong Scorpio in their natal chart or in their progress chart. Okay, from that third week, going for about a month through. Now, the symbols here, I've got the scorpion there, and then I have this sort of eagle sort of energy here, which is a mythological eagle, I suppose, and then the phoenix. And this is what we hope, to liberate ourselves from the thrall of the physical self and the thrall of the ego. So as I said, Mars transits through Scorpio, because it'll have a Mars return approximately every 2 years. And in 2025, these are the dates, 22 September through November. But it's not just Mars going through Scorpio. On the 6th of October, Mercury joins in the energy of Scorpio. And then on the 21st, the moon's in Scorpio. Then on the 23rd, the sun leaves Libra, where it is at the moment, and goes into Scorpio. And on the 25th, the Vulcan goes into Scorpio. And then we have, I can't see because it's hidden, Venus on the 7th of November. We have a few planets lining up in Scorpio over the next 5 weeks or so, 6 weeks. Yes, and so really what we have is an opportunity for that transformation and that transmutation. But equally, we must realise that the ego will do everything it can to maintain status quo, to maintain control. And one of the things that Mars and Scorpio is known for is the tendency to self-destruct. It's a bit like the, the scorpion that will sting itself. You know, if it can't destroy somebody else, it will destroy itself, and we have a fight to the death. And I think this is what we're witnessing at the moment on the world stage with the world politics. And the Zionist elements of Israel have been, I think, stinging themselves and may well end up imploding. But we have the battle going on for everyone to see. And the purpose from a soul level is to transform the shadow, the darkness, whether it's the generational, the national, into light. And the best way to do that is find some higher value or higher cause and maintain your allegiance to that cause. And in that way, we can renew ourselves. Okay, so to talk about the tests of Scorpio, the Lord Dwell Cool mentions them very briefly in esoteric astrology. And he doesn't really say anything more than outline what the tests are. But when you combine them with the labours of Hercules, then we can see, and the Lord DK tells us that the tests are about sexuality, power, money, fear, hatred, ambition, pride, separation, cruelty. Now, I can remember, 20 odd years ago, whenever I came upon this teaching a long time ago, immediately thinking that these were associated with the 3 decans of Scorpio, and therefore 0 to 10 were the first three tests, sex, power, and money. And the second three tests, fear, hatred, and ambition, are associated with the second decan, that's 10 to 20 degrees of Scorpio, and therefore the cleaning up of the astral body. And the other three tests, pride, separation, and cruelty, are associated with the lower mental plane and the degrees from 20 degrees through to 30 degrees Scorpio. And if you're interested in the labours of Hercules, then there's a link there. You'll get it in the slideshow, and you can go to the esoteric teaching around Scorpio and how it's connected to those heads of the Hydra. Okay, so let's have a look at this chart. I've cast the chart here for the 25th of Scorpio, 25th of September, sorry, in New York, when a Mars had just moved into Scorpio. So there's Mars in Scorpio. Now, Mars is a fantastic placement on the spiritual path if it falls in Scorpio, because you'll get the soul stepping forward and willingly working with light in the life and actively working at the redemption of the self. Yeah. And on the 25th, which incidentally was my Maitreya day, we had the moon in Scorpio. Yes. Now, I think it was, it actually was the 25th of September, I think it was, that towards the end of that week of the United Nations meeting, where 77 nations effectively boycotted Netanyahu and said, well, we stand with Palestine. And this was interesting because quite a significant amount of the Arab nations of the world, Egypt, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Kuwait, Iraq, Syria and Qatar, also were all part of that boycott. And I forget however many nations there are in total, but that was a significant amount of the delegates who went, that's it, we just, and they staged a walkout, which was a fantastic consolidation. And if I look at the chart, I think I've talked about this before, the big blue triangle, the grand trine in air going from Uranus up to the Sun and Vulcan and down to Pluto. And to me, that represents the world community speaking with one voice for humaneness. Would it have been better decades earlier, or at least 2 years earlier? Of course, but I suppose you could say maybe better late than never. The other interesting thing is that despite most of the audience disappearing, Netanyahu stood at the podium and delivered his speech where he justified the reasons why they had to do what they were doing. And to me, that's the Mars-Pluto square. There's Mars in Scorpio, 2 degrees Scorpio, and there's Pluto in 1 degree, 1.5 degree. So this is what we'd say, a very tight square between Mars or Pluto. So that's a bit like someone getting you by the throat and squeezing you until the life is taken away. It's a fight to the death. And I think that's where Israel, the Zionists, and Netanyahu are on the back foot, and they're incredibly intent on maintaining victory. And he vowed to continue the genocide at all costs. And it was on the 25th that the moon was in the middle degree of Scorpio. And now the middle degree of Scorpio is associated with the emotional test associated with hatred. And so I think that was witness for everybody to see how the goal that Netanyahu's always stated is, well, I'm just there to get the hostages, was unveiled as a blatant lie, where he said, well, it's genocide at all cost. Nothing to do with the hostages, really, genocide at all costs. So I just point that out because of the Scorpio on that particular day. Okay. And then I've been looking at these dates when Mars is going through Scorpio from that 3rd week of September through till the 1st week of November, and just seeing how the issues on the world stage are connecting to these particular degrees. So between 0 and 3.5 degrees of Scorpio is, the Lord DK tells us this is to do with sexuality. But I have a suspicion that it's also got a great deal to do with the survival of humanity, which of course sexuality is connected to the survival of the human race. And so for that last week of September, when Mars was transiting this degree of survival, we have witnessed the famine and the genocide in Gaza. We did witness the United Nations General Assembly. We have witnessed the increase of violence, death, inability to survive. And this has been hyped up since the assassination of Charlie Kirk. The other thing that we've witnessed is the National Guard being called into Portland on the Pacific coast of North America. And if you've been following world politics, you would know that Donald Trump has used his emergency powers to call in the National Guard in Chicago, Los Angeles, Washington, and Portland in that last week of September. So, this is, who is it that's trying to fight or survive? Is it the elite? Is it the military complex that are trying to maintain their power and their grip upon survival to the point of rolling out the National Guard into American cities? Okay, and then from the 28th of September through till the 2nd, that's today, Mars has been moving through the degrees associated with physical comfort. And this is from 3.5 degrees to 6.6 degrees. And the issue associated with physical comfort is food and shelter, and that sort of sense of survival by being comfortable. And it's known as the degree of physical comfort. And if we don't have a roof over our head or water or food to eat, well, there's no comfort. And then I think it was just today I heard that the National Guard's been called into Memphis, Tennessee, in America. So I immediately start thinking, hang on a minute, the National Guard's being posted in places all around North America, on the Pacific coast, down in California, up the top in Portland, Chicago, south of the Great Lakes, Washington, and then just today, Tennessee. And the other thing that's happened on the world stage just today or yesterday maybe was the US government's gone into shutdown because there's been an inability to agree on the budget, and effectively supply's been blocked. Now, I know that happens every few years in America, and I'm not quite sure what the ramifications are of that, but it seems to me that it's a very dangerous thing. On the other thing that's happened is that the US had moved its major warship into the Eastern Mediterranean Sea in the last couple of days. So, it seems like on the one hand, North America's heading towards something with the National Guard, and the global issues are also heating up. And then between the 2nd, that's today, and the 7th of October, Mars moves through the degree of money. That's 6.6 to effectively 10 degrees of Scorpio. So we have to watch and see what happens on the world stage with money. Is this USA opening their pockets to pour money into a war with Iran, or a continued war with Gaza? Or is it that there's no money for the government employees in North America? I don't know, but the issue is money. This is how the Dark Brotherhood will use Mars in the next week, is money, whereas at the moment they're using it to remove physical comfort from people. Okay. That was me just trying to have a look and see where it is the National Guard's been deployed. The West Coast, over here on the East Coast, and Chicago and Tennessee. Yes. And Donald Trump gave an address to the generals. Was it yesterday or a couple of days ago? And there are a few words that really jumped out. It was a long, rambling rave. But one of the things that he said was that we have a war happening from within our own borders, and we're under invasion from within, and we have to use some of these dangerous cities. I think he's talking about Portland, Los Angeles, or goodness knows what other cities, as training grounds for the National Guard. Well, when I heard that, I thought, my goodness, he's basically telling everybody we're rolling out, what do they call it, when the military is in control, suspending any facade, any attempt for it to be democratic, and we just roll out the military and they're in charge. This has actually been happening since the 10th of June, but, you know, it appears to me that it's not going to stop. Very dangerous. Okay, let's have a look at Mars transiting through the middle decan of Scorpio. That's from 10 degrees through to 20 degrees. And in my estimation, this is the dealing with those issues in the astral body of fear. And the degrees of fear are being activated from the 6th to the 12th of October. So we expect fear to be used as a trigger to get people to do whatever it is that the governments want them to do. So we have to be very, very mindful ourselves not to buy into fear. You know, what's the terrible thing I'm afraid of that might happen? Because if we buy into the collective fear as Mars is going through this middle decan of Scorpio, then we're in trouble. And I couldn't help but notice that on the 12th of October in Australia, what do they call it? The specifications to get an Australian passport to enter into Europe are that one needs to hand over your own biometric data. Now, it's always been in the past that you have to have your photograph taken, but now you've got to give them your fingerprint. You've got to give them, it seems, an iris scan. And the way I look at it is that we went from the Internet of Things to the Internet of Bodies, and that this is the rollout of the Internet of Bodies of our biometric DNA being used for surveillance. And it's happening all over Europe, because initially I thought it was just Australia. And then I realised that Australia is in lockstep with Europe, and Europe have shifted their systems. Yes, so that's just one of the things that I think is associated with the ability to control people. The other things we should look at from this 12th to the 16th of October is Mars moving through the degree to do with hatred. And the middle degree of the sign of Scorpio is the most dangerous degrees. So this is very dangerous dates, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16th of October, when Mars throws, it's like carrying gelignite, and if you trip, it all blows up. And so, of course, we need to move away from any form of hatred, because it contaminates us. And then the degree of ambition, and this is the 16th to the 21st of October, when Mars moves through the 16.5 degrees through to 20 degrees of Scorpio. And I started thinking, well, what are the ambitions? And immediately I thought, well, of course, the Israeli ambition is for Greater Israel. It's to take over more of Lebanon, more of Syria, and if they can get a handle on it, Iran. And of course, different nations would have their own national agendas and national ambitions. And of course, this is the ego wanting to control things through ambition that impacts us on an astral level, on a fear level, on a hatred level, or on a gut level of somehow or other we're being controlled. So these are dangerous issues for those sort of middle part of October. Okay, and then I started hunting around in my database, looking for significant people who have Scorpio prominent. And I was looking for people with Mars in Scorpio, but in the end, I've decided to use Abdullah II. Is he the king or the monarch of Jordan? I did a little bit of reading about him. This is his chart. He was born on the 30th of June, 1962, and he has this very, very powerful Aquarian stellium, which was prevalent in the early in 62, which is associated, many astrologers would associate this with the dawning of the age of Aquarius. And he's from the royal Hashemite family, and he's actually a constitutional monarch. When I was reading a little bit about his history, I realised that he'd been educated in London and somewhere in the States, and that he's actually a major general in the armed forces. And of course, and he's got strong Scorpio. So he hasn't got Mars in Scorpio, he's got the midheaven in Scorpio, 9 degrees, Neptune in the middle degrees, 13.5, and the moon in 24 of Scorpio. So he's an interesting person to watch in terms of how he responds and reacts. Remembering that the ninth degree of Scorpio, did I say it before, is associated with money? Yes. And so I started looking at his biography in terms of how's he used money. And I read that he liberalised the economy in 1999. And I also read that his country had had troubles after the Arab Spring, and they'd gone into an economic slump. And then apparently he's also got hidden family wealths tucked away in offshore entities that came out through the Panama Papers in 2021. So he has significant issues to do with money in his chart, in his life, connected to this ninth degree. And then his Neptune falls in the middle degrees of Scorpio. Now, I confess that my understanding of the history between Jordan and Israel's not strong, but I know that Jordan's been an ally of America and the ally of Israel, and is right on the border. I think shares a border with the West Bank. Is that right? So I don't know whether the spillover of Zionism that's connected to the hatred spills over and impacts him as a constitutional monarch of Jordan. Yeah. But he's got Neptune there. And interestingly, Neptune's the planet associated with compassion. Yeah. And of course, that's a generational placement, but it's a very elevated Neptune in his chart. So I would expect that he would demonstrate a degree of compassion, hopefully in the face of hatred, in the face of the Zionists. And if anybody listened to his speech at the United Nations, it was wonderful, absolutely wonderful. And he took the platform and called out the genocide by name. And then he has the moon in the degree associated with separation, and with this square down to Mercury. There it is, 23. And I was reading that he's had a problematic relationship with one of his brothers who is considered to be corrupt. And so I think that degree of his moon is something to do with family issues with his brother and a split or a separation from that. But, when we have people who are prominent in the world history, and we can observe their Scorpio and how we work with them. How does he work with it? And because the Scorpio sits in the 10th house to do with the government, then the way he handles the Scorpio energy, does he stand up for light or is he cowed by hatred, can be visible and witnessed. And I wonder, because there have been meetings with the Arab leaders in the last couple of days in order to get agreement with the latest 21-point peace plan, supposed peace plan. So I don't know, and he signed that plan. So I don't know whether he's been simply outnumbered, because the week before he spoke up very courageously, compassionately on behalf of the Palestinian people. But now he's one of the, I think it was 7 Arab leaders who've signed off on the peace plan. Not that it necessarily means anything. And of course, that Aquarian stellium, we could talk forever about that. Extremely interesting. But I did notice that he has promoted interfaith dialogue within Jordan, and that he's considered to be a moderate Muslim. So he's a good example of a leader with strong Scorpio. Okay, let's talk about some of the keynotes. Now, the triumphant disciple is a good way to describe the esoteric keynote of a Scorpio, and particularly Mars in Scorpio, because it brings out this extremely high idealism and devotion of the 6th ray, free from its shadow. And the keynote is, warrior am I, and from the battle I emerge triumphant. So triumph after the battle with darkness is what's expected of disciples who have the Scorpio strong. And then that's just a lovely image of a Shambhala disciple. And then the exoteric, or the worldly keynote is, let Maya flourish and let deception rule. And the reason for that is because exoterically, on a worldly level, Scorpio is governed by the 4th ray of harmony through conflict. And so we can see the Maya flourishing everywhere, and we can see the deception that's run amok everywhere on the world stage, not the least of which has gone into overdrive since the AI. Okay, and now I wanted to talk to you about the possible attack on Iran, because of course when was it, 2 or 3 months ago, when Israel attacked Iran and America came in and supported them after deviously trapping them into
It
pretending.
was June this year.
Oh, June, was it? Thank you. Yeah. So after deviously pretending that they were going to negotiate terms, and I think it's fairly obvious that we're going to have another attack on Iran. And I wonder whether it will happen while Mars is moving through Scorpio, and specifically in that sort of second or third week. And to this end, I was just having a look at the chart. So this first chart here, I've cast it for Washington and on the 7th of October. Okay, and the reason why I wondered about that was because Mercury and Mars, there's Mars still in Scorpio, it's now moved to the 10th degree, but Mercury is in the second degree of Scorpio, and the second degree is associated with that sexuality, or I think survival. And the interesting thing on the 7th of October, what's that, next Tuesday? That's right, yeah, is this very tight square to Pluto. And what happens when Pluto and Mercury are in such a tight square is that you want to strangle the truth and stop it from going out. Yeah. So how do you do that? Do you bring in martial law? Do you try and control the populace? Do you make sure that you broaden the global biometric rollout? Or do you do what the Zionists have done in the last week? Well, it's only the last week that I've heard about it. I don't know when they actually did it, but the American Zionist-led company Oracle has taken control of TikTok. And the reason they've done this is because Netanyahu has publicly said, well, we have been losing the propaganda war, and the only way to win the propaganda war is to take control of the mouthpieces, TikTok being one of them, X being another one, and he's particularly targeting the younger generation. So I look at this Mercury-Pluto square and I see this is the attempt to strangle dissent and to stop anybody speaking about anything that is considered dangerous. This has been happening in the UK for a little while. If you speak or you protest, you can be locked up. You're considered a terrorist. It's happening in America. And I think this attempt to gain control of the social media that impacts the younger generation is coming into full force. Yes, so that's Mercury, and I think that, and the other thing is that Mars is sitting in the 11th degree. So Mercury is there in the physical survival with the Dark Brotherhood, trying to control the media, whereas Mars is operating on an emotional level. Yeah, and Mars has a difficult pattern. Let me see if I can see the pattern. So there's the sesquiquadrate going down to Saturn. That's right. Yes. Oh, and this Mercury has it as well. The dotted red line that goes from Mercury up to the nodes, north, south node, and down to the north node. That one is the attempt to control and limit the information going out globally. And you know it's the global community because it's the nodes. Whereas this Mars to Saturn is an attempt to persecute people. Now the square and a half, that's the 135 degrees from Mars to Saturn, I think is an attempt to persecute and to justify the persecution, because anybody who speaks out against persecution comes under the wrath of the various governments. It's totalitarianism gone insane. I continued to look, and I've cast this chart here for the 12th of October, and I've cast it for Jerusalem, and there's Mercury and Mars very close together again. And of course, astrologically, when things get close, then the energy gets more intense. So Mercury's moved into the degree to do with money, which made me wonder whether, because a lot of the speculation has been, well, if Israel decides to launch a war on Iran, have they got the budget? Can they afford to do this? And the answer is that they can't. They need the backing of their financial buddy, America. So I wonder whether this is money being poured into the war, and is that Iran? And then, of course, Mars is sitting in the degree of hatred here. And so we have an intensification of the battle where a whole lot of money is being thrown into the camp of hatred. And again, you see the dotted red line. One goes over the moon on that day and down here to the Saturn Neptune. And the dotted red lines are power struggles. This is the fight to the death. This is someone hitting you in the jugular and removing food, air, water, all of those things. So, of course, it's the possibility of the rollout of the war in Iran, as well as the continued genocide in the Gaza. I've looked a little bit further, the 18th of October, that's a couple of weeks' time, isn't it? That's a Saturday. And you'll see the Mercury and Mars are still traveling together. This time, Mercury's sitting, Mars is sitting in the degree of ambition. Yes, and Mercury's still in the degree of hatred. But this time they're very, very close together, 16 and 17. So I look at that and I think, well, this is the ambition that is founded upon absolute hatred. And the ambition is for the greater Israel. But it could be all kinds of ambition for various world leaders. I just happen to be looking at Israel. There may be many other places where ambition to win territory or power or control over individuals via hatred is operable. But that's the 18th of October. So all of this while the sun is transiting the gentle sign of Libra. But Mars and Mercury together, there's a few links that I've put for the various things that I've mentioned. It's the one there for the Alice Bailey one. Yeah, but it's a challenging time that we're living through. And if you're at all interested in the world events, then it's quite riveting in terms of, it's like a battle. The way I look at it, it's kind of like a battle where I can't quite look away. And yet I need to hold the light and work with the networks of light at the same time as observing this fight to the death as humanity's shadow comes forward. Okay, I think I might stop there. Thank you for